My parents gave my college fund to my brother for his startup. We lost it all. They demanded my house. They bet on the genius. They should have bet on the grinder. In every family with a golden child, there is a shadow. The shadow is where the other children live. We're the ones who get the practical gifts, socks, and calculators, not the fun ones. We're the ones who are told to be understanding when the golden child makes a mistake that would get us grounded for life. We are the ones who are expected to be the safety net for a high-wire act we never agree to watch. We are the plow horses expected to pull the cart so the show pony can trot. I spent my entire childhood in the shadow of my brother, Julian Bennett. Julian was the son. He was charismatic, handsome, and according to my mother, destined for greatness. I was Lucas Bennett. I was reliable. I was sturdy. And according to my father, I was fine. Just fine. Like a Toyota Corolla. Reliable, but not something you brag about to your friends at the country club. My name is Lucas Bennett. I am 29 years old. I own Bennett Industrial, a commercial electrical contracting firm in Chicago. I have 40 employees. I have a fleet of trucks with my name on the side. I have dirt under my fingernails, calluses on my palms that could strike a match, and 7 figures in the bank. And yesterday, my parents and Julian stood on my front porch, wet from the freezing rain, asking if they could come inside the house that Average built. To understand why I left them in the rain, you have to understand the bank robbery. Not a robbery with guns and masks. A robbery with smiles, hugs, and signatures. The robbery of my future. I grew up in a middle-class home. My father, Robert Bennett, was an accountant who desperately wanted to be a venture capitalist. My mother, Linda Bennett, was a school administrator who thought she was raising the next Steve Jobs. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. And then there was Julian. Julian was 2 years older than me. From the moment he could talk, he was a genius. He didn't just play with blocks. He was an architect. He didn't just doodle. He was an artist. He didn't just argue. He was a litigator. My parents fed this delusion with a shovel. They threw money into the furnace of his fleeting interests. When Julian wanted to learn guitar, they bought him a Fender Stratocaster and a Marshall amp. He played for 3 weeks, learned the opening riff to Smoke on the Water, and then got bored. The guitar gathered dust in the corner. When Julian wanted to be a photographer, they bought him a $2,000 Nikon camera with 3 lenses. He took pictures of trash cans for a week, called it urban grit, and then moved on. When Julian decided he was a fencer, they bought him the gear, the mask, the foil. Meanwhile, I asked for a bike. I got Julian's old one, spray-painted black to hide the rust spots where he had left it out in the rain. "Lucas, you're so practical," Mom would say, patting my head dismissively. "You don't need fancy things. You're happy with what you have. You're low maintenance." It wasn't that I was happy. It was that I knew asking was pointless. I learned early on that the family budget had 2 categories: Julian's potential and household expenses. I fell into the expenses category, somewhere between the water bill and the grocery budget. I remember the science fair in 7th grade. That was the moment I realized the game was rigged. I spent 3 weeks building a working AM radio from scratch. I soldered the wires myself. I wound the copper coil. It worked. You could hear the local sports station through the earpiece. Julian, who was in 9th grade, bought a pre-made volcano kit the night before. He painted it red. He poured vinegar and baking soda in it. It was the same project every kid does. At the fair, my parents stood by Julian's table for 3 hours. They told everyone about his artistic vision with the paint. They ignore my table completely. When Julian won Best Presentation and I won Best Engineering, they only framed his certificate. "Engineering is just following instructions, Lucas," Dad told me. What Julian did, that was performance art. That's charisma. You can't teach that. The dynamic was set in stone. Julian had potential, and I had utility. Julian was the racehorse. I was the plow horse. When the garage needed cleaning, I did it. When the lawn needed mowing, I did it. Julian couldn't risk his artist hands pulling weeds. I worked hard in school. I wasn't a genius, but I had grit. I got straight as not because I absorbed information by osmosis, but because I studied until my eyes burned. Julian got CS because he wasn't challenged enough by the curriculum. The system doesn't understand him, Dad would say, signing Julian's report card without a lecture. He thinks outside the box. Grades are for worker bees, Lucas. Julian is a queen bee. When I brought home a report card with a 4.0 GPA, Dad would glance at it while watching TV and say, "Good job, Luke. Keep it up." That was it. There was no celebration, no dinner, just the expectation that the plow horse keeps plowing. But I had a goal. Since I was 10, I knew there was a college fund. My grandfather had started it before he died. He put $20,000 in for each of us in a dedicated account. With interest and contributions from my parents over the years, I knew it had grown significantly. I wanted to go to engineering school. I wanted to build things. I wanted to understand how the world worked, the wires, the gears, the load-bearing walls. I dreamed of Purdue University. I kept a brochure under my mattress, looking at it when I felt invisible. When Julian graduated high school, he didn't go to college. "College is a scam," Julian announced at the dinner table, pushing his food around. "It's for drones. It kills creativity. I'm going to LA. I'm going to be a screenwriter. I have a vision." My parents were hesitant, but they agreed. They gave him a stipend from his college fund to support him. "Just to get him on his feet," Mom said. "He needs to find his tribe." 2 years later, Julian was back. He hadn't written a screenplay. He hadn't even written a pamphlet. He had, however, spent all his money on parties, networking events, and leasing a convertible. "The industry is toxic," Julian said, eating the pot roast I had cooked because Mom was tired. "But I have a new idea. Tech. That's where the future is. I have an app idea that will change the world. It's going to disrupt the social fabric." I rolled my eyes, but my parents leaned in. I saw that look in their eyes, the gambler's gleam. They wanted him to be right so badly. They needed their investment in his genius to pay off, or else they had raised a spoiled brat for nothing. I was 18. It was my senior year. I had applied to Purdue. I checked the mailbox every day. Finally, the big envelope came. I was ecstatic. I ran into the kitchen, waving the letter. "Mom, Dad," I shouted. "I got in. Purdue. Engineering. And I got into the honors college." My mother looked at my father. My father looked at the table. They didn't smile. That's great, Lucas," Dad said. His voice was hollow, like he was speaking from inside a barrel. "What's wrong?" I asked, the excitement draining out of me. "It's expensive, I know, but with the college fund, I can cover the first 2 years easy, and I'll work for the rest. I have it all planned out." There was a silence that stretched so tight, I thought the windows would shatter. "Lucas," my mother said softly, "about the fund." "What about it?" "It's gone," she said. I froze. "What do you mean gone?" "Granddad left it for me. It's in the trust." "We invested it," Dad said, finding his voice, trying to sound authoritative. "In Julian." I looked at Julian. He was smirking, tapping on his phone, not even looking up. "We liquidated your account last week," Mom explained. "Julian's app? It's a unicorn, Lucas. It's the next Facebook. He needed seed money. Investors wouldn't bite because they don't see his vision. They're too corporate. So he stepped up. With the angel investors." "You gave him my college money?" I whispered. "You gave away my $50,000. That was for my tuition." "It's an investment," Dad insisted, his face turning red. "When the app launches, he's going to pay you back double. Triple. You can go to college then. Just take a gap year. Or 2. "A gap year," I shouted. "He blew his own fund on a vacation in LA? Now you gave him mine? What about Granddad?" "It wasn't a vacation, it was research," Julian snapped. "And you don't understand business, Lucas. You're too small-minded. You think in hourly wages. I think in equity. This app is going to retire Mom and Dad. It's going to buy you a house." "You stole from me," I said to my parents. "Granddad gave that money to me." "We didn't steal," Mom said, offended, clutching her pearls. "We moved family assets to where they would have the highest return. Julian is on the cusp of something huge." "You. Well, Lucas, you're smart, but you're just going to be an engineer. You can get student loans. You're employable." "Julian, He's an artist. He can't get a loan for a startup. I can't get loans, I yelled. Not for everything. I can't afford Purdue without that money. I worked for 4 years for those grades. Then go to community college, Dad said, slamming his hand on the table. Stop being so selfish. Your brother is trying to build a legacy for this family, and you're whining about a specific school. Support him. Be a team player for once in your life. Selfish. The word rang in my ears like a gunshot. The boy who mowed the lawn, fixed the leaky faucet, and cooked dinner was selfish. The boy who spent $50,000 on bottle service in LA was the legacy. I looked at them. I looked at Julian, who was suppressing a grin, clearly enjoying seeing the plow horse put in his place. I looked at the parents who had just sacrificed my future on the altar of his ego. Okay, I said, I'll support him. Good, Dad said, relaxing. We knew you'd understand. I support him by leaving, I said. I walked out of the room. I went to my bedroom. Eat peck to bake. I took my clothes, my savings from mowing lawns, $800, and my grandfather's watch. I left that night. I didn't go to Purdue. I couldn't bear the debt. I didn't go to community college. I was done asking them for anything. I was done with the system. I slept in my car for 3 nights. It was a terrifying reality check. I ate peanut butter out of a jar. I washed up in gas station bathrooms. On the 4th day, I walked onto a construction site. I saw a van that said Miller Electric. I found the foreman. I need a job, I said. I don't know anything, but I'll show up on time, I won't steal, and I'll work until you tell me to stop. The foreman, a gruff man named Sal, looked at my desperation. You got boots? He asked. Yes, I said. Be here at 6 a.m. You're a helper. You dig ditches and carry wire. $12 an hour. That was the beginning. I didn't talk to my parents for a year. I blocked their numbers. I focused on survival. It was grueling work. I crawled through attics filled with fiberglass insulation in the middle of July, sweating until I was dizzy. I dug trenches in the freezing Chicago winter, my hands so cold I couldn't hold a coffee cup. I carried heavy spools of copper wire up 10 flights of stairs because the elevator wasn't working. But I loved it. I loved the logic of it. A circuit either works or it doesn't. There is no potential. There is only continuity. If you wire it right, the light turns on. If you wire it wrong, it sparks. It was honest. Unlike my family. I heard about them, though. Small towns talk. And social media is a window you can't always close. Julian's app, something called Barkstream, social networking for pets, launched. It crashed immediately. It was buggy, unoriginal, and useless. About 6 months after I left, I ran into Julian at a gas station. I was in my work clothes covered in drywall dust. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my car. Hey, little brother, he said, leaning against his leased BMW. Still digging ditches? I'm learning a trade, I said. How's the app? It's pivoting, he said, waving his hand dismissively. The market isn't ready. We're restructuring. Listen, I actually rent a loft downtown. For the headquarters. You should come see it. It's visionary. I went. Against my better judgment, I went. The office was a loft that cost $4,000 a month. Inside, there were Herman Miller chairs, a ping pong table, and a fridge full of craft beer. There were 3 people working, which meant playing Mario Kart. Where are the developers? I asked. We outsourced the coding to India, Julian said, sipping a latte. We're the idea guys. We handle the branding. I looked around at the waste. My college fund. My grandfather's legacy. It was being spent on ergonomic chairs for people who didn't work. You're burning cash, I said. You don't get it, Julian sneered. This is how you project success. Fake it till you make it. He didn't make it. He just faked it until the money ran out. 6 months later, the money was gone. Julian moved back home. Meanwhile, I was grinding. I finished my apprenticeship in record time. I became a journeyman. I worked 60 hours a week. I saved every penny. I ate ramen. I drove a beat-up truck. I lived in a basement apartment that smelled like mildew, but it was my mildew. When I was 22, I got my master electrician license. When I was 23, I started Bennett Industrial. Just me in a van. I was good. I showed up on time. I didn't overcharge. I fixed things right the first time. In the trades, that makes you a unicorn. Word spread. I hired my first employee, a kid named Mateo, who reminded me of myself. Then my second. I started bidding on commercial jobs, office buildings, warehouses, data centers. By the time I was 26, I was a millionaire on paper. By 28, I was a millionaire in cash. I bought a house, not a flashy one, but a solid one. A modern estate on 5 acres outside the city. It has a heated garage for my trucks. It has a chef's kitchen. It has floor-to-ceiling windows. It has peace. I reconnected with my parents briefly over the years. Christmas cards. A polite phone call on Mother's Day. I kept it surface level. I wanted to see if they had changed. They hadn't. They never apologized. In fact, they doubled down. Julian is pivoting. Dad told me on the phone when I was 25. I was sitting in my office, looking at a contract for a skyscraper. He's into crypto now. He's a day trader. He just needs a little capital to get the leverage working. He says Bitcoin is the future. Don't give him money, Dad. I warned. He's gambling. You don't understand markets, Lucas, Dad said condescendingly. You work with your hands. You're a laborer. Julian works with his mind. He understands the blockchain. It's the future of finance. High risk, high reward. You wouldn't get it. I understand math, I said, and I understand Julian. Well, we're supporting him, Dad said stiffly. We're remortgaging the house. My blood ran cold. The house I grew up in. The house that was paid off. The house my grandfather helped them buy. Dad, don't do it, I said. That's your retirement. It's equity, Lucas. It's dead money sitting in bricks. We're putting it to work. Julian has a system. They took out $200,000 of equity and gave it to Julian for his crypto fund. Julian lost it in 3 weeks. He bought into a pump-and-dump scheme on some obscure coin. He leveraged himself to the hilt and got liquidated while he was asleep. But they didn't stop. They were terrified of Julian failing, because if he failed, they were wrong. And they couldn't bear to be wrong. They maxed out their credit cards. They cashed in their 401ks. They sold their second car. Julian, for his part, remained arrogant. Even when he was broke, he acted like a temporarily embarrassed billionaire. I'm just waiting for the market to correct. He'd post on Facebook while living in my parents' basement at age 31, playing video games all day. Then came the crash. My father had a mild stroke. The stress of the debt, the drinking, the worry, it caught up to him. He survived, but he couldn't work anymore. The disability payments weren't enough to cover the mortgage on the house they had leveraged for Julian. The bank foreclosed. I found out because my aunt called me. They're being evicted on Tuesday, she said. They have nowhere to go. Julian has no credit and no rental history. Your parents have no savings. The sheriff is coming at noon. I didn't call them. I waited. I wanted to see what they would do. On Tuesday, it rained. A cold, miserable Chicago rain that seeps into your bones. I was in my kitchen, making coffee with my Italian espresso machine. I stood by the glass wall that looks out over the long driveway. I saw a U-Haul truck pull up to my gate. It was old and battered. Behind it was Julian's leased BMW, which I'm sure was months behind on payments. My phone rang. It was Mom. Lucas, she sounded frantic, her voice high and tight. Open the gate. We're here. I took a sip of my coffee. I walked to the intercom panel on the wall. Hello, I said. Lucas, it's Mom, she cried. And Dad and Julian. Open the gate. We have the truck. We can't park on the road. It's dangerous. Why are you here? I asked. What kind of question is that? Dad's voice came over the speaker, slurred slightly from the stroke, but still commanding. We lost the house. The bank took it. We're moving in with you. Moving in, I repeated. We never discussed this. You have 5 bedrooms. Mom shouted. You live alone in that mansion. We're family. Where else are we supposed to go? I looked at the monitor. I saw Julian standing by the gate, smoking a vape, looking bored. He wasn't even looking at the camera. He was checking his phone, probably posting about his journey or blaming the system for his bad luck. He looked exactly the same as the day he took my money. Entitled. Smug. I don't know where you're supposed to go, I said, but you're not coming in here. There was a stunned silence. The kind of silence that happens when the plow horse finally kicks back. Lucas, Dad growled. I am your father. You owe us. We raised you. You raised me until I was 18, I said, and then you robbed me. That money again? Julian yelled, finally looking at the camera. He stepped closer, his face distorted by the lens. Get over it, man. It was 50 grand. You're rich now. I see your trucks everywhere. You obviously didn't need it. You're hoarding wealth while we're suffering. I didn't need it because I worked, I said. I worked while you played CEO. I crawled through insulation while you bought bottle service. I dug holes while you bought crypto. We invested in your brother because we believed in him. Mom sobbed, leaning against the gate. We made a mistake. The market turned against him. Are you going to punish us for believing in our son? You didn't just believe in him, I said. You sacrificed me for him. You looked at the two of us and decided he was the winner and I was the loser. You bet the farm on the wrong horse, Mom. And now the race is over. You lost the ticket. He's your brother, she screamed. He needs help. He's fragile. He's an artist. He's 31, I said. He's not fragile. He's a leech. And you're the hosts. If I let you in, he'll drain me too. I know him. He'll want a job he's not qualified for. He'll want to manage my accounts. He'll want to borrow my trucks. He'll want to rebrand my company. I can help you expand. Julian shouted, proving my point instantly. Your branding is terrible, Lucas. It's so blue-collar. I can revamp your socials. We can franchise. I laughed. It was a cold, hard laugh that startled me. See, I said, he's doing it already. He thinks he knows better than the man who built the business. He thinks he's the genius, and I'm the wallet. Lucas, please, Dad begged, his voice breaking into a sob. It's cold. I can't be out in this rain. I have a condition. We have nowhere to go. You had a paid-off house, I said. You had retirement accounts. You had stability. You liquidated it all. You gave it to Julian. You gave him my room years ago. You gave him my tuition. You gave him your equity. You gave him everything. I leaned into the intercom, my voice shaking with a decade of suppressed rage. You gave him everything, I repeated. So go live in the house that Julian built. He doesn't have a house, Mom wailed. Exactly, I said, because he never built anything. And neither did you. You just dismantled what others built. I turned off the intercom. I turned off the camera feed. I walked back to the kitchen window. I watched as they stood there for 20 minutes. Julian kicked the gate, scuffing his limited edition sneakers. Dad sat on the bumper of the U-Haul with his head in his hands, the rain soaking his jacket. Mom screamed at the sky, arms wide, playing the victim one last time. Eventually, they got back in the vehicles and drove away. My aunt tells me they're staying in a Motel 6 2 towns over. Julian is apparently trying to sue me for elder abuse because I won't house our parents, but no lawyer will take the case on contingency because there is no case. I owe them nothing. I sent my parents a list of subsidized senior housing in the area. I didn't send money. If I send money, they'll just give it to Julian for his next big idea. Maybe AI art. Maybe virtual real estate. Whatever the next shiny object is. They made their investment. They went all in on the golden child. Now, they have to live on the returns. And the returns are zero. Have you ever been the backup plan child while your sibling got everything? Do you think Lucas was too harsh, or was he protecting his hard-earned peace? If you believe that you can't plant weeds and expect to harvest wheat, hit that like button and subscribe. #GoldenChild.